If you're wondering why you didn't have a quiz today with all this stuff to remember, I want to give you a quiz before you had a good mnemonic to use. So let's look at my favorites from your submissions. There was something from every class. Some classes had a couple I liked. And honestly, you pick whatever you want to use. If you submitted one and that's in your brain and you want to use that, great. Otherwise, pick one of these. Don't keep putting cola on floor. It's sticky. Makes sense. Disobedient Kyle, please collect oysters for Grandpa's snack. Okay. Dude, Katy Perry could totally, obviously fight Gwen Stefani. I put the totally in there. That sounded right. Donkey Kong punches children occasionally, for God's sake. Not all the time, just occasionally. Dandy King Philip cried over Family Guy spinoff. Didn't know penguins can obey fat, goofy salmon. And David's khaki pants caught on fire going sledding. All great. Whatever you want, but I'd write one down because you got to have those memorized in order. Domain, kingdom, final class, order, family, genus, and species. Don't write them all down. Don't confuse yourself. Just pick one you think is going to be the easiest to remember. Chapter 16, 17 tests are in. Grades were quite good. Your class's average was an 83. I'm very happy with that. Good work. Keep it up. I'll get copied. Questions? Okay, so you know the 8 levels of taxonomic groups. You know what a cladogram looks like. You built some very simple ones yourself. You'll get deeper into cladograms with today's assignment. That'll be an ongoing assignment that involves a particular website that'll kind of go all week. But for now, let's take a trip into the domains and kingdoms of living things on Earth. Let's just call it kind of a quick survey of those domains and kingdoms. Don't draw this, but this is the basic organization. What happened was we used to have 5 kingdoms, right? Bacteria, protists, fungi, plants, and animals. Up until like 40 years ago, that was the case. And then we started finding more and more places where these weird, kind of alien-looking bacteria we call archaea now existed. And as DNA evidence has mounted, what we've basically found is these are the direct descendants of the first cells on Earth. As opposed to regular bacteria, the kind that like make you sick or make you yogurt or cheese. And these two are genetically as different, if not more different from each other genetically, as either of them is from everything else on the planet. So they basically decided we need a level above kingdom called domain. So there's 3 domains, 6 kingdoms. Let's just write that in a better organized way, like this. So 6 kingdoms, 2 of them get their own domain, and the other 4 are in the 3rd domain. So what we're going to do now is basically a quick trip through all 6 of these kingdoms. Not with a view to like knowing everything about each of these 6 kingdoms, but knowing what makes them fit into the kingdom. Thank you. The first one's the one we're going to spend the most time on because it's the most foreign to us. It's really, we've only known about it for 40 years or so, and man, are they different. Raise your hand if you need more time with this. Okay, so We are in prokaryotic stuff now. You don't have to write that down, but that's what our first two kingdoms are in our first two domains. Domain one, archaea, the archaebacteria. We call them the oldest organisms on Earth. Doesn't really mean they're old individually, right? It's not that these cells are super duper old. It's that they are the direct descendants of the first cells that ever existed, at least that we have evidence of on Earth. As all bacteria are, they are unicellular. Many of them associate with each other in colonies. Thank goodness for that. That's how we found fossils of them, to determine that they were the oldest critters on Earth. They associate in these mats called stromatolites that fossilize pretty well. They are prokaryotic, which means no nucleus, no membrane-bound organelles, smaller than eukaryotic cells, and so on. They have cell walls, although those cell walls are made of different chemicals than any other cells on Earth. And one of the reasons we didn't find them until 40 years ago or so, or at least didn't identify them as what they are, is that they live in places that are kind of scary for us. We call them extremophiles, meaning they like extreme conditions, at least extreme to us. Those conditions include extreme heat, extreme salinity, that is saltiness, extreme chemicals like hydrogen sulfide that are toxic to us, lack of oxygen, all that. Anybody want to guess why? Why we tend to find archaean bacteria in extreme conditions? Hot, toxic, no oxygen.
That it's like the full Earth nice environment.
For us, yeah. Yeah, the Earth, one of the lessons I'd like to instill deep in you this chapter is that if you're the one that builds a time machine, I don't know who it's going to be. Maybe you already did, but if you build a time machine, be careful how far back you go. Because back far enough in the Earth's history would totally kill you. The early Earth was not a place you want to be. It was full of volcanic activity, toxic chemicals, no oxygen. It's where these guys lived. And so basically what happened was when the Earth started to change, when it cooled down, when it got oxygen, when it became less toxic for us, that was bad for them. So they basically had to either go extinct or find places that still look like that. And so you find them in the places that still have the characteristics of the early Earth. That's why. Three groupings of them, it's not all of them, but here's some examples. The methanogens are bacteria that make methane. The halophiles, like extreme salinity, extremely salty environments. And the extremothermophiles, that's another big word that means something real simple. They just like it real hot. One of the real interesting alien-ish things about some of the archaeans is that not only are some of them autotrophic in the way that we're used to, photosynthetic, they are photoautotrophs, they were the first photosynthetic cells. Not only that, but these guys are the reason in ecology, I have to say, most ecosystems, almost all ecosystems on Earth depend ultimately for their energy on the sun. I have to say almost because of a small subset of archaeans that are what we call chemoautotrophs. They do something called chemosynthesis that is making their own food without light, using mostly hydrogen sulfide, chemicals that are produced from geothermal activity of the Earth. And that discovery in late 70s, 1977, 78, something like that, what they found, basically, they sent a submarine down to the bottom of these hot sulfur vents in the bottom of the ocean off the coast of South America, spewing out like sulfur-type chemicals. And they found ecosystems that had never, ever been seen before, because they were all based not off of plant life that depends on the sun, but off of bacterial life that depends on chemicals coming out of these faults in the Earth's crust. So I'm going to show you a short video on them here, because they're cool and you deserve to see it. Whoa, there we go.
Since 1977, dozens of pet sites around the world have been discovered, and hundreds of new species. Huge and tipped white crabs, ghost swallow. So, eat but then these organs this has completely changed the way we become.
So cool stuff. And that's about all you need to know about them. They're prokaryotes. They're different from the regular bacteria that we're used to because they are the direct descendants of the earliest cells on Earth. So from them into the bacteria that you're used to, which we're going to call eubacteria, which literally means true bacteria. I don't want you to think that like these are more authentic somehow. They're not. They're just the ones that we kind of figured out first. So we call them the true bacteria. plenty in common structurally with the archaeans. They're unicellular. Some of them are colonial. They don't have a nucleus. They don't have membrane-bound organelles. They're small. They have cell walls, although they are chemically different from archaean cell walls and chemically different from plant and fungus cell walls. You'll learn a fair amount more about them in our next unit, which is about diseases, because we'll talk about some of the ones that cause diseases. But I guess the thing to know right now is they're everywhere. Like no other kingdom of living things on Earth, regular true bacteria are just everywhere. They are all throughout the air, the atmosphere, in the soil, in you. There's like more bacterial cells inside you than there are cells that belong to you. That's how thoroughly they permeate life on Earth. Some of them are autotrophic. We have photosynthetic bacteria. We used to call them blue-green algae, but now we know they are true bacteria. And that's about as much as we're going to devote to them. Rounding out the first half, we have our third kingdom, which is the kingdom that taxonomists, people who study this stuff, love to hate. They will tell you this is not a true kingdom. This is not a taxonomically authentic kingdom. And they're right. The protists, which are the first kingdom in domain eukarya, okay, domain eukarya being all the cells that have a true nucleus, true organelles, like the ones you learned in chapter 7. This domain consists of 4 kingdoms, and protists is the first, and then there's fungi, plants, and animals. Protist is it's not really an authentic kingdom. Many classification specialists, many taxonomists, systematists have proposed getting rid of this kingdom. Here's why. The members of that kingdom are not in that kingdom together because they're related to each other. They are not in that kingdom because they're more related to each other than any of them are to any of the other kingdoms. And so that makes it basically kind of a bogus kingdom taxonomically. They're there because it's all the organisms that weren't quite qualified to be in any of the other 3. In fact, we classify them that way. The phyla of protists are plant-like protists, animal-like protists, and fungus-like protists. Basically, they're almost animals, almost plants, or almost fungi, and related more to each of those kingdoms than they are to each other. They just don't quite have what you need to be in that kingdom. So we shoved them all together in the protist kingdom. That's what's weird about it. So they're cool. I mean, grab a little tube of pond water, as we will when it gets warm enough, and look at it under the microscope, and you're going to see a bunch of them. A lot of diversity here. Some unicellularity, some colonialism, even some true multicellularity. A lot of seaweeds are considered protists. And algae. You see a lot of motility, which if you're wondering why I don't just use the word mobility or mobile instead of motile, they are different. Mobile means you can move it around. Motile means it can get around on its own. Some heterotrophs, some autotrophs here. Obviously, if we're looking at animal-like, fungus-like, and plant-like, the plant-like protists are the ones that are autotrophic, that are photosynthetic. And again, these are not as related to each other as each of them is to the other three kingdoms of eukaryotes. So we classify them as animal-like, plant-like, and fungus-like. And it's definitely the oddball kingdom that way. So that gets us through the weird ones. I mean, I guess fungi are kind of weird. But like we get into kind of familiar territory now. So we're not going to take a big trip through all the diversity in plants, fungi, and animals. Well, all we need to do for this chapter is be able to recognize what makes them what they are. What makes a fungus, plant, and an animal, an animal, and why aren't they the same as each other? And so it's basically going to come down to, we are now to the multicellular kingdoms. So all of them are multicellular. What it's going to come down to is, do they have cell walls, and are they autotrophic or heterotrophic? So fungi. Anybody recognize that one? Any mushroom hunters in your family? Oh man, they're so good. It's actually not a true mushroom, it's a different phylum, but it's called the morel mushroom. It's the beginning of the season is right now, and it lasts about 2 weeks. You can only find them wild. They haven't figured out how to farm them yet. They're very mysterious. And you can find tons of them around here. And if you wanted to buy them in the store, you'd be paying like like street drug prices. Like they're like you know, $30, $50 an ounce, like crazy prices, because you can't grow them. You have to find them wild. Anyway, fungi are defined by being heterotrophic. But unlike animals, they're heterotrophs that can't walk around and find food. They have cell walls, so they're stuck. They're stuck like plants, but they're heterotrophic like animals. So what's the solution? How do most fungi make their living? What do they eat? What do you find most mushrooms growing on? How about dead stuff? You knew this, right? Yeah. Most of them, many of them, maybe not most, but many of them are decomposers for that reason. Mostly multicellular. This is the one of the three that actually does sometimes exist unicellularly. Yeast would be one of those exceptions. Yeast that you know about because of chapter 9 are the ones that do fermentation and make us things like bread. They have a cell wall. It's made of chitin. Remember that polysaccharide made of a bunch of glucose units. Not to be confused with cellulose, which makes up plant cell walls. And of course, these are, among other groups, the mushrooms, molds, yeasts. And that's as deep as we need to go. This gets even easier as we finish it out. Fungi defined by being heterotrophic, multicellular, with a cell wall, so can't move, right? Plants, very similar. Heterotrophic, sorry, multicellular but autotrophic. That's the difference here. Kind of like fungi that can make their own food. Can't move around because they got cell walls made of cellulose, another polysaccharide made of glucose. And of course, they have those chloroplasts. Last but not least, the most familiar kingdom. But at this level, the differences are very specific, right? These are all multicellular. Animals are the ones that are multicellular, heterotrophic, which so far sounds like fungi. The difference being no cell walls, which enables maybe our biggest feature. Animals' biggest feature probably that we get to move around. Evolved muscles, brains, and all kinds of cool stuff like that because no cell walls. Very basic differences here we're talking about. You need to know them, but there's not a lot. Once done writing, grab a device, please. So this is a thing where you're going to have to log into a particular site, and I need to show you how to do it in a way that will save your progress. Please listen carefully. Pay attention because I'm trying to save you wasted work here. Because if it logs you in as a guest, it's not going to save anything you do, and there's no way you're doing all this in one sitting. Okay? So what I want you to do is just head into your browser and Google Nova Labs. Google Nova Labs. Hit the PBS link right here, the general link. And if it says log out right here where my mouse is right here, if it says log out, you hit log out. It should say log in. Okay? It should have a green login there. If it's automatically logged you in as a guest, it'll say log out there. You don't want to be a guest. You want to make sure you log in with your school Google account. So log in, hit sign in with Google, and make sure it uses your school account. It should give you a choice. I don't think it knows me by my other accounts. So you got to make sure you do that. And the way to know if you did it right is this. You go to the left and hit the Evolution Lab, which is the only one we'll be doing. The Evolution Lab. You hit play game. Now look up here. There's going to be in the upper left a little orange meeple dude, a little orange person looking guy. If you mouse over that, it should show your first name right there. If it doesn't, if it says guest, you're going to need to go back to that first screen, log out, and log back in with Google. That is something to pay attention to every time you start this. Make sure it knows it's you. If it knows it's you, it's going to save every mission you do. There are 6 missions. Mission 1 with a packet is the homework tonight. We'll be doing the other 6 eventually, okay? Feel free to work ahead, but there will be one other packet, okay? So don't go, like if you want to go through like 1 through 4, that's great. Don't do number 5 because you're going to have to do number 5 with another packet, and you don't want to have to redo it, okay? So, I already gave it to you. So you're working your way through mission 1 and the packet for homework tonight, due tomorrow. And that is your assignment. Any questions? Please let me know if you have trouble getting in or getting in as you. And the rest of the time is yours.